All right, we are live. Andrew, Lachlan, welcome to the future of fitness, my friend.
Eric, thanks so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I always say this like every single time I wish I recorded stuff prior to actually recording, like the initial
Right.
conversation we've had for the last 17 minutes, because it's really fun and I good vibe. We know a lot of mutual people, and I'm super curious about what you're doing at Sauna House. There's a lot of questions that you ask me, like, well, what kind of questions do you want to ask? I'm like, dude, I got too many for an hour. So
There's a
uh,
lot of questions in my
so many
industry.
questions. Yeah. Well, let's get into it. I mean, so you started this in November of 2018, which is actually it's been around longer than I thought.
Yeah,
Um, Maybe give us a little bit of the history, relevant backstory to how you got to that point, and then we'll take it off from there after the inception of Sauna House.
sure. So I've always loved small business. I mean, I was selling golf balls as a kid, making money to buy goldfish or
I did
Swedish
that too.
fish. Yeah,
Yeah,
Swedish fish at the
yeah.
swim club. I love business and I always have. And I've always been more on the creative and the idea side, marketing, sales. That's kind of my side, ideation, vision. I grew up a competitive athlete too. So I've talked about this on some other stuff, but when my athletic career ended, I always say my drinking career really took off. And, by age 22, I was pretty suicidal and really heavy. I was drinking, a 750 of liquor a day, sometimes more. And at the time I was running a car washing company and I was managing an ice rink. I had failed out of college and I was like trying to keep all the balls in the air as well as my habit, and that was really difficult. And by 23, I was really kind of at the bottom. I had an accident that crushed the tips of some of my fingers off very early in the morning. I was still drunk and we were setting up a mobile car washing site. And I think I had like my first kind of like spiritual awakening of sorts during that time period. About 2 months after the accident, I sold my book of business and all my equipment and went backpacking in Europe for like half a year. And within 2 weeks of that trip, I just magically quit drinking. Then I started like, reconnecting with what I would call my childhood self. And then I launched another company and it was going really well. And about 2 years later, I was like, oh, I think like, I'm older, I'm more mature. I can drink again like normal people. And I started drinking again and quickly realized I couldn't drink like normal people. And so I
Mm.
started trying to quit again. And I wasn't really successful for about 18 months. But after I was successful that time, now I've been sober for almost 12 years and I feel super lucky and that's like a whole story in it's of itself and like all the things. But what was going on for me 2 years sober was I had a job, I was exercising, I was eating right, I was with my girlfriend who's now my wife. On the outside everything was good, but on the inside like I still had tremendous anxiety and my family struggles with depression and I was struggling with anxiety and depression. And a friend of mine introduced me to cold water therapy. And I mean, I did my first cold plunge and like I had done some in the past, like training for athletics. But when you're a little older and you've had a lot more bumps along the way, you like notice intuitively like what's better for your body and so forth. And I felt great after one cold plunge. And then like, he had told me to do it every day for 30 days to see how I felt. And I slept better and I woke up feeling better, and coincidentally, Tim Ferriss launches his pod, same exact time period, basically. And I think like his 11th or 12th guest was Dr. Rhonda Patrick. And she tees off about the big study that now everybody quotes on the internet about the benefits of sauna and cardiovascular health, long term all cause mortality, all those kinds of stats. And wow, that's interesting. And then I moved into a building and I found a sauna in the basement. And so all of a sudden I had like sauna and cold therapy in my life at the same time. And then I started trying out like the public bathing spaces like Kabuki in San Francisco and
Yeah.
Banya and going up to Seattle and seeing Banya 5 and then going to Europe and trying some spaces over there in the summertime. And I just fell in love with the culture, right? Like as an athlete, I was taught to turn on and perform my whole life. I was never taught anything about turning off, mindfulness, breath work, recovery, all that side of performance. Like back then it was literally just like, how do you get people to turn on it? Right? Like there was no like, how do you get people to turn off portion, at least maybe at the high levels, but it hadn't trickled down yet. And now it's like everywhere. And that's everybody talks about is like sleep quality and your Whoop recovery score, right? Like, but back then that wasn't a thing. So yeah, I fell in love with it. And when my wife and I decided to move from San Francisco, we were either going to go to Bend, Oregon, or we were going to go to Asheville, North Carolina, because her family lives in the Carolinas. And I had been working on the business model for about a year. I wanted to bring something to the American people that was like approachable and accessible because what I noticed in all these different communal bathing spaces is that like they're very strongly tied to those cultures, which is like extraordinarily beautiful, but it's also like really hard for Americans to understand what the heck is going on in those some of those spaces. So I built a place where I wanted to go hang out in sauna and cold plunge with my friends. And it turned out like people really liked it. And then the pandemic happened and that banged us up for a while. And then we started growing. So that's kind of the story.
Yeah. There's a lot to go back and unpack there, right? I mean, it's interesting to me, like of all the health benefits, and I think similar to you, the reason I don't have a cold plunge, but telling I'm in Montana, so I have a cold shower, which is pretty darn good
Oh yeah.
because it's cold, right? It's really
Yeah.
cold,
Oh yeah.
and the reason I do it every morning is because of anxiety and
Mm,
depression. Like that
mm,
runs in my family as well, and I feel like that stuff, like a lot of people talk about, I just feel good afterwards, but man, it's stronger than any pill, right?
yeah.
Like it's like just getting out of bed and getting into that shower, into that plunge is probably very challenging mentally. But once you do it, the reward is so great. Just cool
Yeah.
and calm and can focus again.
The clarity and the inflammation, you know, along with dopamine, norepinephrine, and all those things. But I'm really convinced, like, and the science is so early, right? But
Yeah.
I'm personally very convinced that when you expose yourself to cold water therapy on a regular basis, you are tuning the pituitary gland and your neuro brain chemistry to take care of itself like it's never done before. I'm convinced of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Super. Okay. So, um, for 2018,
Hmm.
what was the founding of it? Was it the first location opening? Like, walk us back to
Yeah,
that year.
yeah. So we went from traveling for a year and getting married, visiting bathhouses, coming back to Asheville, buying a house, leasing the commercial building, and getting started on construction. I had never renovated a historical adaptive reuse building. In the industry, it's called a cold dark shell, which
Hmm.
means uh, no power, no water, no HVAC, just basically a shell. And so I started working on that by myself. And my wife was helping me a little bit at the time, but she was pregnant with our first daughter. And so she kind of become less helpful along the way because she had a tough pregnancy and she was very
Hmm.
sick. And yeah, I mean, that was a tough year. We took all of our life savings. I sold my wife's 401k from her nursing career. I pushed in all the cash savings I had, and construction was going pretty well. But of course, as construction does, it went longer and over as things do. And then we had our daughter and hired our first employee, Jen. And I got super lucky with Jen. She became my co founder now and an equity holder in the brand, and just an incredible young woman who can learn and lead from the heart. And just, yeah, feel so lucky to have met Jen. And yeah, that first year I started having panic attacks in the middle of the night because we were running out of money, and the kid, like our daughter, wasn't doing well inside my wife's stomach. And there was like, it was really, really challenging time for me. I wasn't sleeping much at all. I just put on the Sam Harris app and basically listened to meditations and dharmas and pass out and wake up and pass out and wake up, and it'd still be playing. It was a really hard time. Yeah. But getting open was amazing. Like customers immediately showed up. People really started talking about the experience. And then I started realizing how what like the whole last year, like you're not helping anybody, right? Like you're just in the weeds on construction. And once you see someone do a few rounds of sauna and cold therapy that's like came in suffering and is going out feeling really good, then you start to realize like what I'm doing here really matters. And I love serving customers, and I love building community and bringing people together around like what I call social wellness. It's like that's what's great about what we do. It's passive and restorative. You see mothers and daughters there, you see fathers and sons there. You can do this together. It's social, but it's also hard. And I love the quote like bonds are forged in adversity. So you're bonding with strangers and you're bonding with the people you came with in a new way. Yeah, and so once that started happening, like I started coming like back to life and like sleeping a little bit better, and then we got pregnant with our second daughter, and then we closed for COVID 2 weeks later. And so it was like kind of right back into war zone, like right as the fog was lifting. Like we had 3 months of like absolutely crushing the business, very profitable, and like we're like me and Jen were so hype. And I was already looking at new stores in Durham and Charlotte, and like yeah, and then we just closed. And fortunately the government programs were pretty good, and when we did reopen, the customers came back. And yeah, but 2020 was, I mean, hard for everybody, but differently, and life's that way too, right? It's everybody suffers. It's just differently and when. And yeah, coming out of COVID, customers came back and we started looking at expanding, and the franchise model seemed to be a good opportunity at the time. And we're really enjoying that process, as well as launching corporate stores. And now we have two corporate stores really close to opening, first franchisees close to opening, and then we have 4 stores coming right behind that, and then 4 more stores coming right behind that wave. So right now
Wow.
we're kind of in construction development of Q4 of next year. We could do like maybe 2 or 3 more stores next year, but really we're starting to think about 2026 and much bigger picture stuff now.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. The franchise model choice. I
Mhm.
had Robbie Bent on this
Yeah.
podcast not too long ago, and othership is very, very cool concept too, right? Very,
Yep.
different, more it's more experiential in the way that it's led. It's like a
Yep.
class environment, and they have
Yep.
they're really leaning into the guided side of things. And I asked him, would you ever consider franchise? And he said no, they're going to do corporate, not not net, at least not
Yeah.
yet. But he said it's a difficult one to franchise due to the scale and a lot of factors, right? It's just,
Yeah.
we talked about this, like the permitting, the sanitation, the size, the build outs, like the, everything that goes into doing this as a franchise model. So maybe walk us through that
Yeah.
decision, like why a
Yeah.
franchise, and then I'm sure there's always trade offs to each particular model. So how'd you get to that choice?
Yeah. Well, first off, love Robbie Bent and his team. Great concept. Othership is a fun experience. I think it's awesome. They chose a growth path that was different than the path I wanted to choose. So they went VC route with funding, and so they're going corporate, and that's awesome. What I looked at a lot of options early on for funding, and it was like, you know, you give up a lot of control and a lot of the optionality of the future. I'm also a founder who's not interested in really an exit. I'd like to be in this industry for a really, really long time. And so I was trying to be really patient with my capital. And so I decided to leverage, other people's capital as a way to expand early to get, and a way to, I love local owners too, right? So having a local entrepreneur run a store is a great way to grow. Now we'll see how blended we are. Like some franchisors are like 3 corporate stores and 200 franchisees. That's not going to be us. We're going to have a lot of corporate stores and a lot of franchisees as well. But it was a tough decision, but it was mostly driven by the fact that like if I raised capital in that environment that I was in, I would be selling a huge portion of the company and giving up almost all governance in order to grow, because our build outs do cost 2.5 to $5 million a store. And that's super capital intensive. So, we're not we're not trying to sell 50 franchises in a year like some other concepts because our build outs are really capital intensive. They have water demands that are unique, power demands that are unique, humidity, floor systems. Like there's a lot of details and they don't look that complicated. And when I tell people like, oh yeah, they always say, oh, I could build that for, 500K, bro. And I'm like, enjoy the ride. Because you can't, you really can't. If you're going to build pools and permit them correctly and you're going to build a high quality sauna bathing facility, you can't. You can do other stuff, and there's smaller concepts that are infrared or different things. And, you know, that's that model. But Sauna House is trying to build really iconic 5 to 10,000 square foot stores that, are everywhere and accessible and approachable to a really large audience. And I think that like I love this space, right? And like there's gonna be Japanese onsens and there's gonna be more Russian banya style places and there's gonna be more sweat houses and more other ships. And we're really at the beginning of what I call the sauna bathing or bathhouse culture emerging into the US market. And you're gonna see a lot of shapes and sizes. And I think it'll be very interesting to see what the value proposition is for the customer and what the enduring models look like. Yeah. I don't
Yeah,
know, but I think mine has staying power, but we'll see.
I think you got a really good shot, man. And one of the things I want to ask you is, as we were talking about pre-recording, is now over the past few years, I was introduced really to like sauna culture by my neighbor who is from Michigan, but lived in like a Finnish area,
Yeah.
and he built. He's very handy. He built his own really beautiful sauna, and he invited us over for the first time like 4 or 5 years ago. And, it was like a thing, man. It was like a couple hours. We had appetizers, we had a couple beers, right? It was like,
Yep.
in and out, you shower, and it was just a thing you do, and it was really nice and good conversation. I'm like, "That's pretty cool," and started
Yep.
just looking into more. So now whenever I travel, I try to stop in at some sort of bathhouse or and see how it is. And this year it was really interesting. I was in, Central Asia and went to one in Uzbekistan and then one in Istanbul. So ancient, ancient ones, right?
Those ones
And
are really cool.
really cool. Like, wow. Like
Yeah.
they let my wife in. I mean, okay, this is gonna sound bad, but this is just the culture. And
Culture.
they let my wife in. Let her take some photos of me doing all this stuff in the inside stone, and it was just amazing. Just think about how many years behind this. So what I'm getting to is here when I know you've done
Mhm.
this at a much bigger scale. You've really investigated different concepts. So where do you find the inspiration for what
Yeah.
you have at Sauna House?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I'm really inspired by simplicity of the Nordic cultures. The stuff you went and saw in Istanbul is unbelievable. And, to build that today, 100 million, 200 million type type facilities over there. And they're the most reminiscent of Roman bathing culture, actually, in my opinion. Well, my inspiration, yeah, it's definitely from the Nordics and the simplicity. I just wanted a place that was simple and intuitive. I didn't want like when you get to some of the really big facilities, like you're sitting there going like, where am I gonna go next? Or what should I do next? And like I think with like the modern era of questions like, "Oh, I just got a text, should I respond? Oh, I just got an email, I need to do this." Or, "Oh, I gotta go grab my kid." Like, you're asking yourself and checking all the time with like, "What should I be doing? When should I be doing it?" I wanted a place where like you don't ask yourself questions, right? So you're wandering through the space and it's intuitively designed. And to do that well, I think you just have to really reduce the amount of things you do, which is why, like at Sauna House, the first thing we do is we check in, then we take our shoes off, then we require everyone to shower using soap and water, which is traditional bathing culture. Is that like you're pre-cleansing the body before the next cleansing experience. And yeah, so you'll shower and change into your bathing suit. We're co-genders, bathing suits required all the time. This is America. I don't think I could stay in business if we were all nude. It's not mass market. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, yeah.
And then you sauna and rinse before going into the pools, and that helps keep the pools clean. And then you rest and rehydrate. we partnered with a company called Galanter and Jones to provide cast stone concrete furniture exclusive to the Sauna House brand, which is really exciting. And we do tea service and stuff. So you rest, rehydrate, socialize, and then repeat. We have 2 circuits at each store. So you'll have 2 different saunas, 2 different cold pool temperatures, and 2 different relaxing areas. And some of the stores also have warm pools, which is part of the relaxing area. So yeah, I'm really excited to bring what I believe is like celebrates ancient bathing culture in a really simplistic way, but is also like approachable and teachable to the US market. I want like if it's your first sauna bathing experience, like I want you to come use Sauna House and then feel like really empowered to go use Japanese onsen or Russian banya or whatever. But starting with us is going to be a great introduction to, a communal bathing space, which has such a bad rap and scares everybody. So we
Well,
got quite a bit of education to do there.
yeah, well, I was talking to Robbie about this other ship is like if you've been around at least as long as I have, is like when you think of bathhouse, there's a certain connotation
Yeah.
to what may go on in a
Yeah.
place like that. So it takes a
Yeah.
little bit of re-education, but I think that's also starting just generationally starting to kind of wash itself out as like I don't think
Yeah.
like my nieces and nephews in their 20s think of a bathhouse the way that I thought of it, when I was their age.
Yeah.
So there's
Yeah.
definitely it seems to be happening. I got no science behind that. The walk us through like if I'm a new member, right? Like from
Yeah.
discovery of what you guys do to the sales and indoctrination process, the first couple, like how do you take
Yeah.
people, bring them in to the culture?
Yeah. We call it like a welcome flow. We are we're not too much of a membership model. I think it's a little counter. We have some members, we keep some members, but we're mostly like walk-in and series passes.
Hmm.
Memberships are kind of an exclusive thing, and we really want to maintain a high quality third place kind of vibe. Like, could you imagine going into a coffee shop that was a membership model? Like, and you came in and you're like, I'm not a member, but other people are a member. This is like, so we don't want to go too far down the membership model. But a first time customer comes in and they get like a welcome introduction to the brand. And, we walk them through the circuit that I walked you through about moving through space. And then they get a little tour of the space actually, if it's their first time, so that they just feel more comfortable in the space. Like a lot of new people, again, speaking to the bathing environment, right? They don't know what they're doing. It feels a little scary. A lot less now than when we first started. But I mean, literally, when we first started and I worked at the front desk, people would walk through the front door and you could just see fear on their face. Like, it's like these beautiful front doors with plants hanging over them. And it's like white and like smells good. And
Yeah.
fear. Like that was the look on people's face. And so we really wanted to get good at welcoming people in and taking away those feelings and transitioning their vibe into our vibe. And
Why
yeah, and we
fear?
kind of do that with that
Like, is it just
welcoming.
intimidation? Like what?
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think they're just intimidated of the unknown. Like,
Mm,
what am I gonna be doing here? Is it nude? Like what? Yeah. Yeah. Not as
yeah.
much quite now because it's become really mainstream in the last 3 years, like, kind of from 21 on, it started picking up, like, a lot of momentum, and, Huberman and, everybody's my mother-in-law's, 70-year-old Catholic priest is talking about taking cold showers on stage. That's how you know it's hit mainstream, right? Like, if the priests are telling the congregation and like it's on NBC and like Huberman's talking about it, every fourth podcast, right? Like it's full blown having its moment. And I'm very curious to see like how long does this moment stay, right? And what is the enduring, lasting movement that we're all part of right now? And I just feel really lucky to be a part of it. I love the industry. I love all my colleagues in the industry and everybody's building some really beautiful spaces to create connection and healing. And that at the end of the day, like people are suffering. And if we could live in a society that reduces suffering a little more effectively, I think that would be a really exciting society to be part of. And so I enjoy building it.
Yeah. It's It's interesting to see, like, I always relate to my personal experience with CrossFit where it was like it came on hot, man. Everybody talked about it. It was,
Yeah.
in the like it was seemed to be a conversation that was always happening. It just grew so fast and then, eventually plateaued and then kind of settled in. And, when I think about like I kind of see it in the same way as like the sauna culture, the
Mhm.
contrast therapies, all that stuff. It's super hot. Everybody talks about it. Like, what's the old joke?
Yeah.
Like, how do you know if someone cold plunges? Like, oh, don't worry, they'll tell you, right?
Yeah.
It's like, it's just true. That's the same thing with CrossFit. It's the same exact joke. And,
Yep. Yep.
but like trying to articulate this question well, is this something where is it an either or? Like, are the fitness and health and wellness consumers
Mhm.
like, I think people think like, "Oh, is someone gonna pay for the health club and pay for a sauna house," right? Like,
Yeah.
or is this gonna be something that's gonna be a brand new category where it's like, no, people are just gonna commit to this long term and, what do you if you had to bet your money now 2 questions, this is what this is, 2
Okay.
questions. Long term, how do you think the winners will survive in this particular category? And is it gonna be a category of its own, or is it gonna get blended into, like, fitness and health?
Good two-part question.
Thank you.
I'm gonna answer your second question first.
Cool.
I do think it will get blended in, right? Like Lifetime Fitness is, renovating spaces and gonna be adding cold water therapy, and the big box gyms are gonna bring stuff in for sure. And I think that that will be part of the industry, no doubt about it, because the convenience, right? And the velocity of society, I don't think is gonna be slowing down. So if it's really convenient, people will most likely use it. Now, traditionally, gym saunas have had a like, people going in their clothes and like their shoes, and then like they're leaving there's not real intentional sauna bathing etiquette. And so we'll see if they get good at hospitality. Typically, gyms are not good at hospitality or things like that. So setting the vibe, I think, is really important. And so I think that the enduring models are going to be more experiential and have a way better vibe. And like, I'm not trying to take a lifetime customer to make it a full-time sauna house customer. I'm borrowing them like 4 times a month, 5 times a month. And, you do CrossFit 5 days a week, great. Use sauna house once a week maybe, or twice a month, and then there are sauna bathing enthusiasts, right? And they don't have gym memberships. They don't go to the gym. They might walk regularly, hike, but they're not fitness people. But they wanna feel good, and they know what feeling good feels like, and when you sauna and cold plunge, you feel good, and so it actually is much more of their primary thing on top of, walking and hiking and things like that. Yeah, so I think the enduring models are, like, truthfully, like, the ones that are best at building in the high density urban environments, they're gonna do really well if they build community well and they stay on top of cleanliness and maintenance, right? Like public bathing spaces that aren't kept clean are really unpleasant to visit. And so cleanliness is extraordinarily important, but it's actually extremely hard at scale too. Like we clean for 3 hours every day before opening, and then the
Well,
shutdown closing is a couple of hours as well. So, there's, like, a lot of maintenance, cleanliness going on and pool chemistry balancing and, so to do that at scale, I think is hard. So, the enduring models also will be outdoor, like the hot springs type facilities are really beautiful, and I think that those will be an enduring model because obviously people love to travel and they love to do things like this while they travel. And so again, like the more experiential it is in the outdoor spaces, it's going to be an enduring model. And then high density urban environment, it's going to be like CrossFit and all the micro gyms, right? Like it's very ultra competitive, they're you've got CrossFit, you've got Metabolic, you've got big box gyms, you've got Barry's Boot Camp, you've got I'm missing one of my favorite F45. You got a bunch, right? So they all seem to have a lot of space too. Like there's so many of those and those all survive. And so the density of how many sauna cold plunge, contrast therapy studios versus like, is it a big bathing space versus is it a giant bathing space? Like, we'll see what the density ends up being, but like right now, it's like no one has a single clue how many of these per capita will be sustainable. And so, yeah, it'll be very interesting to see the next 5 years unravel because the bigger concepts are typically nicer, right? And I think that they're going to do better. But the contrast therapy studios, like infrared with a cold plunge or something like that, like you can open one of those in a weekend, and there's not that much work, put into the space. And so all the other brands that take a little time and cost a lot more money, we're lagging behind the market a little bit, but we're coming to market and the value proposition's pretty good. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see what the customer likes and what the density looks like.
There's only one way to find out, right?
Yeah,
And,
run it up.
yeah, just do it.
Yeah.
And I kind of, I'm sorry, as the more I talk about this, the more I think about this particular category that's emerging is like, I believe it's more in like the massage therapy stretch lab. And by the way, shout out to Lou for DeFrancisco for connecting us.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm starting to see it more in that category, kind of
Mhm.
taking from that market share, if anything, like that pocketbook. I don't
Yeah.
know, like what do you think about that idea?
Yeah, I think it's more in the spa world, right? Like I think it yeah, like and our category has no name, right? So that's the other fun part about trying to talk about this. No one defines our category the same. Like if you're in Europe, my business is a Nordic spa. That's what it would be called.
Okay.
Um, most most European countries, I should say, or a sauna house. Some countries would call it, but in the U.S., like we don't like to be a spa, like because of spa mentality, which is like you deserve it. It's luxury. It's once a year. It's
Treat yourself. Yeah.
all of that. Treat yourself. Like that's not what I'm going for here. This is like lifestyle wellness, like self care, regular routine recovery. So I think you're going to be taking out of both pockets. To be honest, like I think some people are gonna I think it could take from gyms, and I think it could take from spas as well. So I think it's part of both industries. That's actually kind of part of a lot of conversations we've had internally and watching other competitors is like, that's a gym. That's a gym concept. That's a spa. That's a spa concept. What the hell are we, guys?
It's like
Yeah.
social wellness experiences, like something
Yeah.
like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
you need to frame that.
Yeah, yeah, I need to get with Robbie Bent and create a category name for these sauna bathing facilities because there's really no industry like standard. There's no data. Like it's fun. We're creating a new kind of category, I guess you'd call it.
I want to get into kind of the unit, more of the unit economics, the site selection, market selection.
Mhm.
How many square feet is this thing that you have generally?
Our stores are 5 to 10,000 square feet.
Okay.
Most are right around 6 to 8 right now.
And what type of markets I
Mhm.
guess, and here's another two-part question. What type of markets are you
Yeah,
looking for? And then what type of
mhm.
franchisee are you looking for?
Yeah. We're looking for high density urban environments and suburban markets like the suburbs of Philadelphia is a great market, for instance. That's where I grew up, Philly.
Hmm.
And we'd love to get a store in there. A lot of it has to do with the real estate, because real estate prices are really high right now. And it feels like it's a bit over. We'll see. Seems like it's at the end of a cycle a little bit. Prices are coming down. The market's pretty soft. The pricing got run up so high in commercial real estate that, things feel a little frothy. So we're looking for deals too. Commercial real estate, like when if you haven't gotten into commercial real estate, it couldn't be more opposite than residential, right? Like you have no idea who owns the building, whether they own it outright or they have way too much leverage, or they have partners who want to sell it, or they have, like every single building has a unique story. And so like we are just constantly hunting buildings that work for our concept and you know again, power, water, sewer, parking, right? Like HVAC, like all those things play a huge role in site selection and the cost to construct. Cold dark shell, warm white shell, institutional landlord, mom and pop landlord. So we're very passionate right now in the Southeast. Like most of our deals are happening in the Southeast, but we have some stores going on in Austin and Denver, which is really exciting for us. Those are both really long lead time markets. Some markets, pools are regulated by the health department in almost every state in the country. And each state has different pool code. And that's a big part of the complexity of these projects and the lead time of these projects is making sure the health department has approved your plans before construction or you're back in the permitting office and then, you know, going around and around for 6 months without building, but burning cash and rent coming due sooner. Yeah, so we're looking for really adaptive reuse historical buildings that have great character that I can do something cool with. I love the design build side of things, so we employ a full-time architect and a full-time civil engineer,
Hmm.
and they're my real estate and construction team, and I work with them very closely on all of our franchisees projects and all of our corporate projects. So I travel a lot and love buildings. My dad's a historical project restoration guy, so he helps me a little bit from time to time. And yeah, and then who are we looking for franchisees? I mean, because of the lending environment and how big of our projects are, you need at least 1 million liquid to qualify really to be a Sauna House franchisee. Banks need probably 30 to 35% down to do a project right now and in our landscape and a lot of post-closing liquidity. So pretty high net worth franchisees. That's who we're looking for, and once we have more data out of more stores, multi-store operators will be coming around and bigger people. Right now we're still in the startup phase, so everybody wants to see more data and blah blah blah. But we have a bunch of passionate franchisees right now who are really wonderful that all love the sauna bathing third place kind of industry. None of them have owned a different franchise. So one thing we've learned is like the early adopters are true believers, in this franchise space, and now more traditional institutional franchisees will be coming in. But again, we're very limited in our selection. We can't construct too many stores all at one time, right? And the amount of risk that goes in for the franchisees, like that's why we employ 2 full-time people to ride along with everybody's projects to make sure we're getting really competent architects and engineers and pool engineers involved. And so we are there start to finish on construction, all up in that project to make sure it's getting done right and the franchisees aren't getting themselves into too much trouble.
Yeah, interesting. It reminds me of, I'm sure because you looked at Ben, but like McMenamins. Are you familiar
Yeah,
with them?
McMenamins, cool concept.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, obviously, it's a little different. It's pubs
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
food, but they take old historical places, and I really enjoy whenever I
Mhm.
go in that region of Washington and Oregon and stopping by these things, and they're really fun, and it's a cool experience. Like you're like, okay, there's an old building, like those have like secret trap doors and secret
Yeah.
rooms, so you're like wandering around in bathhouses and basements and stuff like that. So it's just a really cool, unique experience.
They've got a fun thing going on. Big shout out to McMenamins.
Yeah.
My first experience was like maybe 2012 in the Bend, Oregon store.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
the theater there, did you go into
Uh-huh.
the theater and you can watch a
Yeah.
movie and get food, and it's just this old it's just yeah, and they have, I believe, an actual bathhouse down, like a
Yeah.
Russian bathhouse type thing in the bottom, right?
Yeah. They do. Yeah. And yeah, they got food and the movie theater and the bathhouse and like they were bringing things together way before this was ever a movement. So
Yeah. I know it's still early for you guys, in the franchising model, but what's the path to ROI for generally for one of these locations?
yeah, that's how you get in trouble with the franchise attorneys.
Sorry.
I can only speak. I'm not meant to speculate or forecast, and I'm not doing that here. But our Asheville store is very profitable, and I think that it all depends on how you capitalize your project too,
Mhm.
right? Like, are you doing all equity or you have debt? Are you buying a building? Are you leasing a building? Do you get a big TI check or no TI check? All of those things really impact pro forma. And we're we have a couple of team members and advisors now in our brand that, we craft pro formas to every store and every building. And we openly talk through that with our partners to make sure that they understand what we're getting into because they are so unique. I mean, if it doesn't have, if it doesn't have some core infrastructure, that's $1 million more. Like that's going to change, a lot of things in your pro forma. But our FDD's out there and we're getting registered in all the registration states. So you can check out our item 19 and run your numbers on our franchise.
Yeah, all the fun stuff. The last question I always ask here, Andrew, is like, as an industry, fitness, health, and wellness, and people listening, like, what do you need to help with? And, if people are reaching out, what would you like to hear from them about?
Wait, can you say that question again? Sorry.
Yeah, as an industry, how can we help you?
Oh
Basically, like,
yeah.
what do you need help with?
I mean, I need always looking for great buildings, of course. I need an unlimited amount of capital. Eh, it's I'm getting closer every day. But no, yeah, no, we're very fortunate recently. We have an amazing org chart. Like most young franchise brands, like they run super lean on an org chart. You know, they sell and until they get like a bunch of stores open and recurring revenue, like they don't beef up their org chart. Like we have a beefy org chart for a franchise as young as we are, but we want to be an exceptional brand. And so we are what I would say we are gold standard partners in the franchise space. And so to help us, like if you're curious about it, just reach out and, you know, talk to Lane, our franchise sales guy. We do all of our sales internal. You'll work with Lane and then Jen and me directly really early on because again, we're not trying to just sell franchises. We have really no interest in doing that. We want high quality partners who fully understand what they're getting themselves into, who want to help us build a really special vision for our brand. And I think that takes the right people. And yeah, so if you like, hearing me and our message and our brand and you want to come check it out and hang out, please reach out and come see us. So, but other than that, I feel very lucky. I have everything I need really. Now I just need to go develop more stores. But there's so many in the pipe right now. We're quite busy in construction land.
Awesome. Yeah, I love it. I mean, I want to see this whole category be very successful. I think it's just
Yeah.
really beneficial for communities, for people's wellness and health. And it's just untapped in the United States. It's been around forever and I enjoy it. So yeah, I'm cheering you guys on. If people, Andrew, want to get a hold of you personally, is there a way
Yeah,
you would
sure.
direct them to?
Yeah, if you wanna get a hold of me, my Instagram is Andrew Lachlan. You can go on our franchise page and hit the franchise my email, I have an EA in there because now I can't keep up anymore, so I don't wanna give out my email address really, but hit up the franchise sales channel and if you're a serious buyer, you get to me there and on social media, I'm becoming a little more active. Everybody loves a founder story, and I'm not a big press person, but I'm getting better, and I'm wanting to put the voice out there for the brand and represent the brand as best as possible. But yeah, I always say, like me personally, I have zero interest in being famous at all. I just like building. I like hanging out with great team members, building cool things in the world. But me as an individual, I always say I'm another bozo on the bus, which is like, what they told me when I came into AA 12 years ago. And I hope to come across as humble person who's just really focused on building an incredible brand with an incredible team and franchise partners alongside us. So and now, most recently, we just closed an investment round for the first time at the parent company with a great partner, JDS. So shout out to them. They gave us our first seed check, and I'm glad I waited as long as I did, and I'm glad that I partnered with the people I did for the next stage of our growth. So yeah, you can find me there and keep digging in.
Awesome, man. Well, great job. Well spoken. You answered the questions really well. And yeah, man, it was really fun getting to know you here. So, ladies and gentlemen, Andrew Lachlan.
Eric, thank you so much for having me on today, man, and sharing the message for Sauna House.
Yeah, my pleasure.